In the middle of a vast, desolate scrapyard, an alien woman stumbled, her rusted prosthetic legs dragging behind her with every step. The once advanced technology that had allowed her to walk now barely functioned, each step accompanied by a painful screech of metal against metal. The cold wind blew through the abandoned yard, carrying the scent of rust and decay. There was no one around to hear the faint whimpers of pain that escaped her cracked lips. She had been left here to die, abandoned by those who once saw her as valuable. Her name was Kara, though few had ever cared to ask. Once a proud soldier in her people's war against a rival faction, she had been hailed as a hero. But now, her once vibrant skin had faded to a sickly pale hue, and her prosthetics once cutting edge were now little more than reminders of a forgotten past. Her joints were stiff, her sensors malfunctioning, and the pain was constant. Her right leg, in particular, was completely immobilized. She dragged it behind her, her body's every movement slow and laborious. Kara's breathing was shallow, and her vision blurred from the exhaustion. She had been wandering for days now, lost and desperate, her energy drained. The memories of the battle, her fall from grace, and the betrayal of her people haunted her thoughts. They had seen her as too broken to be useful anymore. She had been discarded like scrap metal, a relic of a war long finished. With each step, she could feel herself growing weaker. The dust around her clung to her skin, and her once glistening prosthetics now seemed like a curse. The scrapyard was a graveyard of old technology-broken machines, rusted robots, and discarded vehicles. It was a fitting place for someone like her. She had once fought for her people, but now she was nothing more than a discarded tool, left to be forgotten. Her mind swirled with thoughts of what had led her to this moment. She remembered the betrayal, the decision by her commanders to leave her behind, when she was no longer fit for duty. They had told her it was a temporary setback, that she would be repaired and sent back to the fight. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, she realized the truth. She had been abandoned. The clang of metal echoed through the scrapyard, and Kara's attention snapped to the sound. She froze, her sensors flickering. Was it someone, or was it just the wind playing tricks on her? Her heart raced, though her body felt like it was giving up. The thought of anyone coming to her aid seemed too much to hope for. Yet, the sound had been too real to ignore. She turned, trying to scan her surroundings. But everything appeared just as lifeless as before. The scrapyard stretched out in all directions, an endless sea of discarded junk. But there it was again, the faint sound of footsteps. Someone was out there. Her heart skipped a beat. Was it a scavenger looking for parts? Or worse, a bounty hunter sent to finish her off? She didn't know. But the sudden presence of another being sent a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. With a painful groan, Kara forced herself to move, pushing her damaged legs forward despite the pain. She couldn't afford to stay where she was. She needed to find shelter, to hide from whoever or whatever was coming her way. But as she limped toward a broken-down vehicle nearby, her vision grew darker, her strength finally running out. Her last thought before losing consciousness was a single question: who was coming for her? The air was thick with tension as Kara's body sagged against the wrecked vehicle. Her vision swam, and her limbs felt as though they were made of stone. She could hear the soft sound of footsteps growing louder, but her body refused to cooperate. Every muscle screamed for rest, every breath was a battle. She closed her eyes, desperately hoping for a brief escape from the pain. But the footsteps drew closer, undeniable and relentless. Then, a voice, a low, gravelly voice that seemed to resonate through the very earth beneath her, broke the silence. "I thought I'd find you here." The words sent a chill through Kara's core. She tried to lift her head, her sensors struggling to focus. Through her blurred vision, a shadow emerged from the wreckage, the outline of a human figure becoming clearer. She couldn't make out their face, but she could sense the presence of someone who was not afraid of the scrapyard's grim embrace. The figure stepped closer, their boots crunching against the debris. Kara's heart pounded in her chest. What did this stranger want? She had learned to be wary of anyone who approached her in this forsaken place. Yet, something about the voice felt familiar. It wasn't a threat, at least not yet. She couldn't explain why, but she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in so long: hope. "I came for you," the voice continued, softer this time. "You've been left to rot here too long. "You don't belong among the scrap." The words made her pause. No one had spoken to her like that in years. She wasn't sure if it was pity or something else that stirred in her chest, but it gave her the strength to raise her head, to look at this stranger. Her vision sharpened just enough to make out the silhouette of a tall figure, a man, standing before her with an unreadable expression. For a moment, neither of them moved. The scrapyard stretched out around them, an endless wasteland of metal and rust. And then, as if sensing her hesitation, the stranger knelt down, reaching a hand toward her. "Come with me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I can help you." Kara's instinct screamed at her to resist, to fight against whatever plan this person had for her. She had been deceived before, had been promised help only to be abandoned when her usefulness ran dry. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Yet, she found herself staring at the outstretched hand, the gesture so simple, so genuine. A small part of her wondered if she could afford to believe again. "What do you want from me?" Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper, a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. The man's eyes softened, and for the first time, Kara saw a flicker of something in his gaze. Empathy. "I'm not here to take anything from you. I've seen what they did to you. I know what it's like to be left behind, to be broken. But you're still alive, and that means you still have a chance." The words hung in the air like a lifeline, something Kara hadn't been given in so long. Could she trust him? Could she even trust herself anymore? The fear of being abandoned again gnawed at her, but something about the man's presence felt different. He wasn't just another person looking to use her. Slowly, and with great effort, Kara reached out, her hand trembling as it made contact with his. His grip was steady, firm, and for a moment, she felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. It was strange, the way his touch brought her back to life in a way that even her restored prosthetics couldn't. She didn't understand it, but she didn't need to. All she knew was that, for the first time in a long time, someone cared enough to offer her a chance. Without a word, the man helped her to her feet. The scrap heap behind her, the years of abandonment, the pain, they all seemed to fade as they walked together into the unknown, leaving behind the wreckage of her past. Kara didn't know where this journey would take her, but for the first time, she had a reason to. The journey away from the scrapyard was slow, but with every step, Kara felt a strange sense of release. Her prosthetic legs, newly repaired and stronger than before, moved with ease. The man who had helped her walked beside her, his pace steady but unhurried. He didn't rush her, didn't push her, and for that, Kara was grateful. His silence was companionable, almost soothing, as if he understood her need for time. The scrapyard was soon left behind, replaced by stretches of empty land, barren and unforgiving. Yet there was something different about this place. The air was clearer, less suffocating than the scrapyard's rust-filled atmosphere. It felt like an open space, full of possibility. But Kara knew better than to think she was safe. Nothing in her life had ever been that simple. She couldn't forget the betrayal, the coldness of being cast aside. The scars on her body weren't just physical, they were deeper, woven into her very soul. After what felt like hours of walking, the man finally spoke. "We're almost there," he said, his voice steady, as though he knew exactly where they were headed. Kara nodded, though she didn't fully understand where there was. She had no clue who this man was, or why he cared so much to rescue her from a fate she'd long accepted. She wasn't even sure she wanted to know. She'd learned to trust no one, to depend only on herself. Her trust had been shattered too many times before. Yet, there was something different about this man, something she couldn't ignore. When she had fallen into the scrapyard, abandoned and broken, she hadn't expected anyone to come. But he had, and for that, he deserved at least some semblance of her trust. Even if she couldn't yet give him all of it, they reached a small, makeshift camp as dusk began to fall, the sky streaked with orange and purple. The camp was simple, no fancy technology, no glowing lights, just a few tents and a fire burning in the center. A group of people stood around, talking quietly, their faces wary but curious. The man stopped and turned to Kara. "This is where you'll be safe," he said. "You're not alone here." Kara glanced at the group. There were men and women, some older, some younger, but all with hardened expressions. They didn't look like refugees or wanderers. They looked like fighters, "What is this place?" Kara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A refuge," the man replied, his eyes scanning the group. "A place where people like us come together. We fight back against those who think they can control us, who think they can discard us when we're no longer useful." Kara's heart skipped. This wasn't just a safe haven, it was a resistance. As the man led her toward the fire, the group fell silent, watching her with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. She could feel their eyes on her, weighing her, judging her. She was a stranger here, just like she had been in the scrapyard. But here, for the first time, she wasn't alone. She was with others who had been discarded, just like her. "Sit down," the man said, gesturing to a spot by the fire. "You've been through enough. Rest for now." Kara hesitated, unsure of how to act, but something inside her told her this might be the beginning of something new. Slowly, she sat, feeling the warmth of the fire against her skin. Her eyes lingered on the group, the strangers who would, perhaps, become something more. For the first time, in what felt like forever, Kara allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future. The crackling fire was a welcome warmth against the night's chill, and for the first time since Kara's abandonment, she felt something stir within her, a sense of belonging, however fragile it might be. The shadows of the campfire danced on the faces of the others sitting around the fire, and though they were silent, their presence spoke volumes. They had all experienced loss, pain, and rejection. Kara could see it in their eyes, the same haunted look she had worn for so long. She sat there, her new prosthetics allowing her to move more freely than she had in years. Still, the weight of her past hung heavily on her shoulders, and the firelight couldn't chase away the ghosts of her former life. The memories of the war, the betrayal, and the cold, metallic feel of her previous prosthetics haunted her thoughts. She had been nothing more than a tool for war, and when she no longer served that purpose, she had been discarded, just like all the other broken things in the scrapyard. "Do you know why we fight?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was the man who had helped her, the one who had bought her freedom from the scrapyard. His voice was low, but there was a quiet intensity to it, as if every word mattered. Kara glanced up at him, unsure of what to say. The warmth of the fire made her feel at ease, but his question triggered something inside her. She had fought once, a long time ago, for a cause she believed in. But after everything that had happened, she wasn't sure what she was supposed to believe in anymore. She had given everything for a war that left her broken, and in the end, it had been for nothing. The man leaned forward, his expression softening as he noticed the confusion in her eyes. "We fight because we're the ones who have been left behind. We fight because the ones who cast us aside think we're no longer useful. But we're not just machines. We have something they don't, something they never understood. We have the will to survive, and that's why we fight, not for some distant cause, but for ourselves." Kara stared at him, his words sinking in. She had fought for a cause, but had she ever fought for herself? She had been so consumed with duty, with fulfilling the role others had given her, that she had forgotten to fight for her own survival. But now, here in this place, surrounded by people who understood, maybe there was still a reason to keep fighting. The fire crackled again, and Kara felt something shift within her. She wasn't just a soldier anymore. She wasn't just the broken alien with rusted prosthetics. She was someone with the chance to reclaim her life, to build something new. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living, about finding a purpose beyond the war, beyond the betrayal. "We're stronger than they think," the man continued, his gaze steady. "And together, we can make sure no one else is thrown away like we were." Kara looked around at the faces in the firelight. She saw determination in their eyes, a fierce resolve to take back what had been stolen from them. She wasn't alone anymore, and for the first time, she realized that maybe her fight hadn't ended when they discarded her, it was only just beginning. With a deep breath, Kara stood up, her prosthetics making a soft whirring sound as they adjusted. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she wasn't going to let her past define her. Not anymore. The days that followed were filled with a whirlwind of activity. Kara learned quickly. She had no choice. The camp, though humble, was a place of survival, and survival required action. The people here weren't just hiding from the world. They were fighting back. Every day, they trained, scouted, and planned, ready to face the dangers lurking beyond their camp. The group moved like a well-oiled machine, each person contributing their own skill, their own strength. Kara's prosthetics, now fully functional, became an asset she had never imagined. Her legs, once clumsy and rusted, had become an extension of herself, each movement fluid and purposeful. She could run, climb, and fight with more precision than ever before. But with this newfound power came a responsibility she hadn't anticipated. The others looked to her now, not as a broken soldier, but as someone capable of contributing, of leading. The man who had brought her here, the one who had bought her from the scrapyard, became her mentor. He taught her to use her prosthetics as a weapon, showing her how to harness the strength they gave her. At first, Kara was hesitant. She wasn't sure she could trust herself, let alone others. But slowly, her doubts began to fade. With each lesson, each fight, she grew more confident, more capable. Her body, once weak and frail, had become a weapon, a tool for change. But the physical training wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was the battle inside her own mind. She had been abandoned once, left to die, and now she was being asked to trust again, to fight for something, to fight for a future, when she had been so sure that her future had been stolen. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the camp, Kara sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The others were busy preparing for their next mission, one that would take them deeper into enemy territory. They needed supplies, and the only way to get them was to risk everything. Kara's heart pounded at the thought. She had never been one for recklessness, but there was no other choice. They were a small group, outnumbered and outgunned. But they had one thing the enemy didn't, the will to survive. The man, as if sensing her unease, sat down next to her. "You're ready," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience. "You've come a long way. Don't doubt yourself now." Kara looked at him, her eyes searching his face for the certainty she longed to feel. But the man's face remained steady, his gaze unwavering. He wasn't giving her false hope. He believed in her something she wasn't sure she had ever truly believed in herself. "I'm not like them," Kara whispered, almost to herself. "I've been a soldier, but I've never fought for something like this before." The man nodded, his expression softening. "You're fighting for yourself now, Kara, and that's the most important thing of all." The words hit her like a shockwave. For the first time, she realized that her fight wasn't just for survival, it was for her own future, for her own purpose. She wasn't just a soldier. She wasn't just a broken machine. She was someone who could change the world, if she was willing to fight for it. As the fire flickered and the camp settled into quiet anticipation, Kara stood up, her new resolve burning within her. The fear that had once held her captive, the doubt that had plagued her thoughts was gone. She wasn't the same woman who had been discarded in the scrapyard. She was something more, something stronger. With a steady breath, Kara joined the others, ready to face whatever lay ahead. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and for the first time in a long time, she was ready to fight for that life. The mission was set to begin at dawn, the cold night air thick with anticipation. Kara stood among the group, her posture tense, her prosthetics humming softly as she adjusted their settings. The plan was simple: infiltrate the enemy's supply depot, steal what they needed, and return before anyone noticed they were gone. But nothing about this mission felt simple. The weight of what was at stake hung heavily on her shoulders. This was her first real test since joining the rebellion, and everything she had worked for, everything she had become, was about to be put to the ultimate challenge. As the group gathered around, the man who had been her mentor gave the final briefing. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a sense of urgency that Kara hadn't heard before. "We move fast, we stay quiet, and we don't leave anyone behind. This is a chance to hit them where it hurts. Don't waste it." Kara nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't just about supplies anymore. It was about proving herself, not to them, but to herself. She had fought for so long, in the name of others, never knowing if she had a real purpose beyond the war. But now, in the quiet darkness of this camp, she had found something more. She had found a reason to fight for herself. The group moved swiftly through the night, their footsteps muffled by the soft ground. Kara stayed close to the man, her mind focused on the task ahead. The terrain was unfamiliar, but her enhanced sensors provided a clear map of their surroundings. She wasn't just a soldier anymore, she was a part of something greater. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she truly belonged. The closer they got to the supply depot, the more the tension in the air thickened. Every movement, every sound became amplified in the quiet darkness. They were getting closer to enemy territory, closer to the place that had been the source of so much pain and fear. But Kara's resolve didn't waver. She had come too far to turn back now. When they reached the depot's outer perimeter, they split into smaller teams. Kara was paired with a woman she had only briefly spoken to, a sharp-eyed fighter with a quick mind. Together, they slipped past the guards, their movements fluid and precise. The depot was a maze of corridors and rooms, filled with the hum of machinery and the scent of oil and metal. They moved with purpose, silently disabling security systems and avoiding patrols. Then, just as they neared their target, a sudden sound broke the stillness. A guard, a lone figure, appeared around the corner, his flashlight sweeping the area. Kara's heart raced as she froze in place, her mind scrambling for a plan. She didn't know how to react. This wasn't part of the plan. But the woman beside her acted without hesitation. In one swift motion, she grabbed the guard, knocking him out with a precise blow to the head. Kara stood frozen, watching in disbelief. "Don't just stand there," the woman whispered, her voice urgent. "We've got work to do." Kara shook off her hesitation, focusing once again on the task at hand. The moment of panic had passed, but the reality of what she was doing had hit her like a wave. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, she was taking risks, putting herself in danger for something that mattered. It was terrifying, but it was also liberating. They continued on, reaching the storage room where the supplies were kept. Kara's hands shook as she began to load the crates, her heart still racing from the close call with the guard. But there was no turning back now. As she glanced around, her eyes met the woman's, and for the first time, Kara saw something in her that mirrored her own feelings, a sense of purpose, a drive that went beyond survival. With the crates loaded and their mission nearly complete, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the danger they were in, it was the nagging sense that they weren't alone. But before she could voice her concern, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing louder by the second. Her breath caught in her throat. They were about to be caught, and the real test was about to begin. The footsteps were no longer distant, they were right outside the door. Kara's heart pounded in her chest, every beat echoing in her ears. She froze, her body poised like a predator waiting to strike. The air felt thick, heavier than before, as if the weight of their mission was pressing down on her shoulders. She could feel the eyes of the group on her, could sense the fear that mirrored her own. This wasn't just a test of strength, it was a test of everything she had become. The door to the storage room creaked under the pressure of approaching feet. A quick glance at the woman beside her confirmed her suspicion. They were trapped. The guards were too close, their presence undeniable. There was no easy way out. Kara's fingers curled around the edge of the crate, the cool metal grounding her thoughts. Panic clawed at the edges of her mind, but she shoved it back, refusing to let fear dictate her next move. "We need to move," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the footsteps. But the woman shook her head, her expression grim. "No, we're not running this time." The words hit Kara harder than she expected. She had spent her entire life running, whether from battles, from betrayal, or from herself. But now, this woman was telling her something different, something that resonated deep within her. Before Kara could respond, the door swung open, and the harsh beam of a flashlight swept through the room. The guard's voice echoed down the hallway, low and urgent. "Clear on this side. Check the other rooms." Kara's pulse quickened as she realized they had only seconds before the search intensified. She couldn't just stand here and wait to be caught this time. She would fight. This time, she would make her stand. She nodded to the woman beside her, a silent understanding passing between them. Without another word, they sprang into action. Kara's prosthetic legs powered her forward, her body moving with a grace she hadn't known she was capable of. Her mind was clear now, focused solely on the task at hand. The woman was beside her, leading the charge as they moved swiftly through the dark corridors. They reached the back exit just as the first guard turned toward them. In that moment, Kara's instincts kicked in. She grabbed the nearest object, an old piece of metal pipe, and swung it with all her might. The guard crumpled to the ground, unconscious before he could make a sound. "Go," the woman urged, already sprinting ahead. Kara followed, her heart racing, her body reacting faster than her mind could process. They darted through the winding hallways, the sound of pursuit growing louder. They were almost free, just a few more steps, and they would be outside, into the night. But as they reached the final corner, a shout rang out from behind them. A group of guards appeared, blocking their escape. Kara's mind whirled, her options shrinking with each passing second. There was no way out, no safe place to hide. But then, something inside her clicked. This wasn't about running. This wasn't about survival. This was her moment to prove that she could fight for herself, not just for the cause, not just for the mission, but for her own life. She turned toward the woman, her voice steady but fierce. "We fight, together." The woman smiled, a flash of approval in her eyes. And with that, they both turned to face the approaching guards, ready to take on whatever came their way. The first guard lunged forward. But Kara was faster, her prosthetics giving her an edge she'd never imagined. She blocked his strike and delivered a crushing blow to his chest. The second guard was on her in an instant, but the woman was there, tackling him to the ground before he could react. The two of them fought with a fluidity that was almost instinctual, their movements synchronized like they had fought side by side for years. With every strike, Kara felt her confidence growing. She was no longer the broken, abandoned soldier in the scrapyard. She was someone who could stand her ground, who could fight for herself. She was a warrior in her own right. Finally, with one last push, they overwhelmed the last guard. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoed in the hall, and for a moment, the world was silent. They were victorious. Breathing heavily, Kara looked around at the carnage they had left behind. The adrenaline coursing through her veins slowly began to ebb, but a new sense of purpose had taken its place. The fight wasn't over yet, but this was only the beginning. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and she was ready to fight for whatever came next. As she turned to leave, the woman clapped her on the back. "You did well." Kara's lips curved into a small smile. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing: she was no longer fighting alone.